Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We already started with a virtual wave right off the bat. You can always contact and weigh in on the topics that we'll be discussing at that number on the bottom of your screen. Either text or leave a voicemail. I'll do the best that I can to get your comment on the air. We do have a couple announcements we're going to get to later on, but let's settle back on the sad, tragic note. The U.S. soldiers that were killed in Jordan have been identified. The tragic trio, according to the New York Post, were all Georgia residents from the same military unit. Sergeant William Rivers, 46. Brianna Moffett, 23, of Savannah. And Kennedy Layden Sanders, 24. All these different things that she had plans for, were just cut short in the blink of an eye, Sanders' weeping mother told the Washington Post. I just feel like somebody like her that's so full of life, it's just unfair that she'll never get to realize those dreams that she had. We're going to talk about that. There's some push for the president to retaliate. As far as I'm aware, doing show prep this morning, nothing has been decided as of yet. And the New York Post editorial board says it's appeasement of Iran by Biden and the Biden administration that is costing American lives. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. We do have a few things here about the presidential race, not quite as much, kind of a lull. I know that the former president released an email yesterday highlighting what is a very, very difficult road, if not impossible road, for Nikki Haley. Obviously, she's not getting any delegates from Nevada, so her next chance at a delegate is South Carolina, and her polling number, anyway, does not speak well for that. So we're going to talk about that as well. I just wanted to give you an update because we talked about the soldiers that were killed in Jordan. I'm going to tell you what the administration is saying about it when we come back. We also have quite a few things here just in general. We're going to kind of be hopping all around this morning. That's the kind of morning it is. So please feel free to weigh in. Be a part of Frankly Speaking. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. One quick announcement, and you'll start to see the promos for this playing. I wanted to bring it to your attention. If you'd like to wish your significant other a special Valentine's greeting to be broadcast on Big Fox TV, you remember the Christmas ones and the holiday ones that we enjoyed so much? Very similar. Well, there's one of two things you can do. You can stop by our studio here on Marcus Street, which is 33 East Marcus Street, on February the 5th, 6th, or 7th from noon to 2 to record. We'll have it all set up. You can say what you'd like into the camera, or if you'd like to email me, you can email me your information and your statement, and we can have someone else read it or put it up on the screen, because I know some people can't make it because they'll be working 5th, 6th, or 7th of February from noon to 2, but they want to make a Valentine announcement. Well, please feel free. There is my email, or you can text it there on the screen, and we'll put those up. And then on the week of Valentine, it will be broadcasting the commercials, the statements. I think it's going to be very special, just like the holiday greetings that we all grew to love that we're playing during the broadcast. So I wanted to make sure I brought that up because that's just starting. Okay, get that to go away. There we go. So we just got that started. I want to bring that to you directly, right from the jump. Okay, let's take our first break. When we come back, the New York Post editorial board saying that Biden's appeasement of Iran is costing American lives. That's when we return. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Look at all these waves that are pouring in this morning. Thank you very much. I do want to warn you as you tune in this morning, it looks like there's going to be some landscaping done directly in front of the studio this morning. So you may hear some beeping and some loud noises. I apologize in advance. Okay, so the New York Post editorial board says, we, quote, "We are not looking for a war with Iran. We are not seeking a conflict with the regime in a military way. We're not looking to escalate." That's what White House spokesman Admiral John Kirby said just yesterday, clarifying the president's initial vow, quote, "We will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing." Just days after 3 Americans were killed, they're already signaling to Iran that they'll do as little as possible to make Iran, which Biden admits is where the blame lies, to pay. What a dishonor to Kendi Sanders, William Rivers, and Breonna Moffett, the 3 soldiers killed, tragically killed, and to the dozens injured. And we're talking severe brain trauma in some scenario. Last number I saw was around 32 or 34 injured. And to all the service members that are at risk in the nearly 160 attacks, and that's the Pentagon's count, by Iran's proxies on U.S. forces since October 17th. Not something that's heavily reported in the media, is it? 160 attacks on service members by Iran proxies since October 17th. Iran keeps escalating against us, and Biden keeps blinking. At best, okaying pinprick strikes on the proxy's real estate, never on Iran itself. I did read an interesting piece, and hopefully we get an opportunity to bring it up later on, by highlighting some of the concerns that people have for the president and his decision-making when it comes to, and this is throughout his career, not more in recent years, but just throughout his career when it came to foreign policy. But I'll continue. And Biden's quote, "We will hold all those responsible to account," follows his earlier claims that Iran had heard his warning to cut it out. Remember, don't. I say don't. Heard his real message. Clearly, he's still hoping to appease the mullahs. And a telling sign of the White House incoherence here, Press Secretary Jean-Pierre on Monday said the 3 soldiers died fighting on behalf of this administration. And if you haven't seen that quote, I'm going to try to bring that whole quote to you in just a little bit. I actually printed it out to make sure if you did not see it. I think anymore the term word salad is used too often. It's kind of like nothing burger. It doesn't make a lot of sense. After a while, or it becomes cliche. It makes sense. But I do want to read that to you. Because of this administration is more like it, said the Post. Introducing Kirby at Monday's press briefing, Jean-Pierre blundered continuously. So overwhelmed is she by even trying to talk about national security. That's why the White House has had to bring Kirby in so often since the world started falling apart. And even an admiral can't do much to make the White House look competent. This again, and I'd love to hear your opinion one way or the other, this from the New York Post. Again, Kirby waved off the idea of making Iran feel any pain. As many Republican lawmakers are urging, we're not looking to escalate. Whether Biden administration wants a conflict with Iran or not, he's got one. How many more Americans will die before he admits it? And even CNN had to say Biden got another war he didn't ask for. I'm paraphrasing there. But here's the quote, because I do want to highlight this from Karine Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre. I always struggle with her name, and I apologize. That's the White House press secretary. She said, and this is a quote, so bear with me. It's a tough quote. It's kind of very much so when you hear a statement by Vice President Harris, and it's like you start at the beginning and never really had a conclusion to it, and you just wrap yourself around like a pretzel. That's what this is. So bear with me, and this is the quote from MSNBC's Morning Joe, where the White House press secretary said the following. Our deepest condolences go out, and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families who lost three folks who are military folks, who are brave, who are always fighting, who are fighting on behalf of this administration, of the American people, obviously more so, more importantly. As former GOP Congressman Doug Collins of Georgia said, these are not folks. They are service members who gave their lives, not for this administration, but for the country they serve. They are our best and deserve better than this. Representative Pat Fallon said our service members swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. They're not fighting on behalf of the Biden team. This is incredibly disrespectful. And Abigail Jackson, communications director for Senator Josh Hawley, said the soldiers were there for America, not your administration. We've got more to talk about when we come back. It's inadvertent. They don't mean to be here, but we do have a landscaping company right in front of us. So I do have a crowd this morning for the first time ever. Stay with us. It's like a live show. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I received this comment from a viewer. When the Biden administration removed all the sanctions that were placed on Iran, allows Iran to continue to sell oil. They've had to appease those that they are, I believe this meant, indebted to. $6 billion for hostages proves this administration isn't part of the fabric of our society, has been comprised of, or believes in. How can anyone believe they do anything in our best interest? Actions will always speak louder than words. So keep those comments coming in. Thank you to all the waves that I've been receiving this morning. I always appreciate it. Okay, we got to get back to it here. Blinken said, Antony Blinken was at the Secretary of State, if you're not familiar. He said, I think it's important to note that this is an incredibly volatile time in the Middle East. I would argue that we've not seen a situation as dangerous as the one we're facing now across the region since at least 1973, and arguably even before that. And that is the environment in which we are operating. And of course, that was triggered by the horrific attacks of October 7th by Hamas against innocent men, women, and children. Now, as I said, CNN and other media outlets walking carefully on this, especially as we near election time. I mean, it already is technically election time, but you know what I mean. As we near November, they're not looking to do anything that paints this administration in a bad light. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Before that, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had an urgent warning to Americans, and boy, it couldn't have been more timely. It was hours before the attack in Jordan, saying Iran is targeting the U.S. and the rest of the West. Benjamin Netanyahu's warning to America could not have been more timely. Over the weekend, Douglas Murray from the New York Post sat down with the Israeli Prime Minister at the country's security headquarters in Tel Aviv. I've told President Biden, I've told all the leaders who come here, this is your war as well, because this is not merely a minor skirmish. This is part of a major confrontation between the moderate axis of Israel and the moderate Arab states against Iran. Its proxies are killing Americans as we speak. So Douglas Murray asked Benjamin Netanyahu if he meant the dozens of attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq, since October 7th in Iraq. Not just Iraq, he said. And then just hours later, it was emerged, the news story broke, of the drone strike on American soldiers. It was a fast reminder of something Netanyahu has been warning about for decades, that the militant regime in Iran only attacks Israel as its first target, but not its last. America and the rest of the West is next. Netanyahu said, and this is an exclusive sit-down with Douglas Murray at the New York Post, saying, let me tell you, I think in America the great majority of people support Israel. They understand instinctively that Israel is fighting their battle. They understand instinctively what the terrorists, the radical Islamists say. They say we're the small Satan. America is the great Satan. So a very interesting piece. You can find out more about the whole interview. It's right pretty front and center on the New York Post this morning. It's a highly recommended read. Oh, did you see Fox News was talking at a press conference in regards to this, and it was, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce the name right, Jacques Heinrich of Fox News challenged John Kirby on Monday in the wake of the attack, saying it's clear, obviously, that didn't work. When I saw the headline, I got a little confused there, but I know exactly what she's saying. Don't is what President Biden's forceful words were. Don't attack. The don't refers to a speech that President Joe Biden delivered in the wake of the October 7th terror attack by Hamas against Israel, in which he warned Iran against escalating the war. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. That was the exact quote. That the don't was embraced by Israelis who trusted it as a security guarantee, but Iran appears not to have been deterred by Biden's posture at all, a fact that both Israelis and Americans are starting to realize. So Fox News challenged Kirby, who became defensive as he tried to argue that the U.S. had not been a pushover for the Iranian regime, even as he was careful to reiterate, quote, we are not looking for a war with Iran. We are not looking to escalate the tensions. While he acknowledged that Iran had been responsible for the deaths of U.S. troops, Kirby said, this idea that somehow we just whistled past the graveyard here and walked away from the challenge that Iran possesses is just not borne out by the facts. Now, House Armed Services Committee ranking member, and I do want to say we are not going to focus on this all morning, but I want to give you kind of a condensed crib notes of what is going on and give you some of the information. I know it's very troubling. It's very scary. We've been all kind of walking on eggshells since October 7th, wondering what would be next. Well, on the source on CNN, House Armed Services Committee ranking member Representative Adam Smith, and he's a Democrat, stated that Iran is allowing these attacks on U.S. soldiers to happen with no consequences to themselves. And as long as that continues, the attacks will continue and our service members will be at risk. Wow. I think we all know that's the case. I think we all know that as long as there's no type of punishment, retaliation, what did they stand to lose? And unfortunately, it will lead to, as the New York Post put earlier, more deaths. I think they have to go more directly after the source, he said, which is more directly after Iran. There are a variety of different targets that would impact Iran. Not all of them are in Iran. But I think you've got to put that on the table because the calculus right now is just not in our favor. Iran is allowing these attacks to happen with no consequences to themselves. And as long as that continues, the attacks will continue and our service members will be at risk. And that can't be tolerated. We've got to change Iran's calculus and have them bear some of the cost of what they are doing. That's Democrat Adam Smith, House Armed Services Committee ranking member. We have to take another short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I do want to apologize or highlight this again if you're just tuning in. Right before break, there was a fire truck. Now we have landscaping beginning, so you may hear some background noises. Just to give you a heads up. If you hear that, everything it seems to be happening right in front of the studio this morning. It's pretty exciting. Here's a comment from a viewer. It was triggered, and this attack in Jordan, I'm assuming, it was triggered by the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Yes, Iran getting more aggressive, of course. They will never be able to admit to their failing foreign policies. Thank you to the comments. Keep them coming in, as always. Former Biden, he's a General Frank McKenzie, who served as, here's the official term, U.S. Central Command. He was Central Command under President Trump and Joe Biden, stated that we have not matched the vow to decisively respond to aggression and hold those who attack U.S. troops responsible. Yes, 160 by the Pentagon's numbers, and what has been done. I think we begin by realizing, Wolf, because he was on Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room, that if we want to prevent escalation, we need to leave the theater. If our primary goal is to not have something escalate, we need to get out. That's obviously not our primary goal, so we need to get comfortable with the fact that there can be escalation associated with this. The next thing I would say is Secretary Blinken's words are very strong, very forceful, and very on point. We need to match them with action, and we have not done so over the course of the 150 attacks or so. We heard Pentagon 160. It was like an old Fibber McGee and Molly radio show. You get to hear all the background noise. Anyway, or so they have preceded this lethal attack and the loss of these 3 brave Americans. So I do got to say that Blinken does talk tough, I should say. But there doesn't always seem to be the follow-through or the backup, just kind of the posture. Now, as I had mentioned, CNN trying to kind of get themselves in the pretzel to be careful how they respond to this. Biden's response to Jordan drone attack is likely to be powerful, but U.S. is weary of triggering a wider war with Iran, officials said. So this is one of the things you can blame it on, like anonymous officials. But why is it likely to be powerful? That's the question I would ask you. What has signaled that it will be powerful? Just out of curiosity. President Biden is under increasing pressure to respond in a way that stops these attacks for good. Iran-backed militants have targeted U.S. military facilities in Iraq and Syria over 160 times since October, and several Republican lawmakers have called for the U.S. to hit inside Iran directly to send a clear message. But the biggest challenge now for the Biden administration is how to respond to the drone strike, the deadliest attack on U.S. forces in the region since the bombing at Abbey Gate killed 13 U.S. service members in the closing days of Afghanistan withdrawal. And to that viewer's point, I do believe that Afghanistan withdrawal really showed a weakness that has been exploited on so many levels, whether you want to look at Russia going into Ukraine, if you want to talk about Hamas's attack, if you want to talk about Iran proxy attacks on American soldiers. The U.S. has in recent months carried out several strikes targeting Iran proxies, weapons, depot in Iraq and Syria. To date, none of those strikes have deterred the militants, whose 165 attacks have injured over 120 U.S. service members across the region since October. Now, and we are going to get away from this after the next break, but another piece, this by Stephen Collinson. Biden has to deal with a second war he didn't want. His task is to contain it. With a wider regional war raging in the Middle East, Biden's challenge is how to prevent dramatic escalation. Neither Washington nor Tehran seems to want a full-scale regional war. It's easy, listen to the part, it's easy for Republicans to call for hitting Iran directly when they're not the ones in the White House. No, the president's the one in the White House, and there's a lot of tough talk is what we're saying. We're just curious, and I don't know what the follow-through is going to be. As the last CNMP said, officials think it's likely going to be serious. It's likely going to be, what's the word they use, powerful. The critical task now for President Biden, as he mulls retaliation over the deaths of the 3 Americans in an attack, is to prevent the regional-wide war from tipping out of control. It is indisputable that the United States is again embroiled in a war in the wider Middle East, less than 3 years after Biden officially decreed the end of a 2-decade-long combat mission in Iraq that exhausted the U.S. and caused deep political trauma. It's also clear that the Biden administration's efforts to prevent an escalation is not working. U.S. strikes against Iranian-backed militia throughout the region, which followed more than 160 attacks on American military facilities, did not deter Sunday's drone strike. And missile and drone attacks against commercial shipping in the Red Sea haven't stopped despite rolling U.S. airstrikes against the launch sites and infrastructure in Yemen. Yes, we could talk about this all day, but I wanted to well, technically this isn't wrapping it up, but it is for the time being. This is what I highlighted at the beginning of the program, and you may recall this. We had talked about it before on the program, or maybe just made reference to it. But a former top Obama administration official, his past criticism of now President Joe Biden has kind of resurfaced. It's something that pops up quite frequently, actually, but this specifically after the attack. That official, former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, remember that name? First expressed his displeasure with Biden's foreign policy position in a 2014 memoir titled Duty, Memoirs of a Secretary at War. And he said about then Vice President Joe Biden, he had, quote, been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Gates doubled down on those claims when asked about his book during a 2021 interview on CBS, saying, quote, I think he's gotten a lot wrong. He then pointed that he said was Biden's opposition to every one of Ronald Reagan's military programs to contest the Soviet Union, the first Gulf War, and their differences concerning the war in Afghanistan. Gates also said he believed Biden made a mistake in the way he handled the U.S. military's withdrawal from Afghanistan that same year. And I know this was never completely verified, or I guess confirmed by the Biden administration, but wasn't it, or the Obama administration, wasn't Biden the only one in in the White House, but in that cabinet meeting that did not want the soldiers to go in and kill Osama bin Laden? That was always, I don't think speculate is the right word, that's always been said, but that goes back to what Robert Gates said, that Biden had been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. All right, so we wrap up on that, sort of. We do have something else. Oh, are we on right now? Okay. I think we might have had just a technical difficulty just real quick. I think we're doing okay. Okay, I just want to make sure. We got to take another short break. When we come back, again, it's kind of in the same vein, but it is a little bit different. Then we're going to talk about, maybe the impeachment of Mayorkas, but we have a lot to get to. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Our beautiful view of Market Street as they're working on it as we speak. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, I'm Frank Acom. This is Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the comments. Here's another comment. Easiest way with a single strike is to destroy Iran's oil refinery on Abadan Island It is their main refinery. That would cripple their exporting. Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming in, as always. I do really appreciate it. Okay. As I said, this is kind of in line, but not exactly. Are you familiar with Representative Claudia Tenney from here in New York? Well, just days after 3 American soldiers were killed by Iranian proxies, Claudia Tenney nominated former President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, citing his historic Abraham Accords treaty. In a statement released to Fox, she said Donald Trump was instrumental in facilitating the first new peace agreement in the Middle East in almost 30 years. For decades, bureaucrats, foreign policy professionals, and international organizations insisted that additional Middle East peace agreements were impossible without a resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. President Trump proved that to be false. The Nobel Peace Prize acknowledged the peace accord between Israel and Egypt in 1978, as well as the Oslo Accords in 1994. However, there's been no recognition for Trump's role in brokering an agreement between Israel and the 4 of its Arab neighbors aimed at normalizing diplomatic and economic relations between the nations, Tenney noted. Again, Tenney saying, the valiant effort by President Trump in creating the Abraham Accords were unprecedented and continue to go unrecognized by the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, underscoring the need for this nomination today. Now more than ever, when Joe Biden's weak leadership on the international stage is threatening our country's safety and security, we must recognize Trump for his strong leadership and his efforts to achieve world peace. I'm honored to nominate former President Donald Trump today, and I'm eager for him to receive the recognition he deserves. Now, that's interesting. Is she trying to make her moves, trying to outpace Elise Stefanik, that may be getting a VP now? This Representative Claudia Tenney, if you're just joining us. Interesting. Interesting timing. Okay, I wanted to pass it along. We do have a couple of quick stories like that we may get to. Speaking of Elise Stefanik, let me get to that real quickly, since I jumped into that. According to The Hill, her stock is rising. Now, one of the things that I brought up on this program about Elise Stefanik being the vice presidential pick for former President Trump is that you've got 2 people from New York. So you're not getting a lot of times people think you pick your number 2 to potentially win a state you might not normally win. That doesn't always work. If you remember, Paul Ryan could not carry his home state for Mitt Romney, but that may speak a little bit more about Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney than anybody else. Oh, another comment. It's about time President Trump gets the Peace Prize. Thank you. Keep those comments coming in. But Elise Stefanik, according to The Hill, her stock is rapidly rising in the race to be former President Trump's running mate. Stefanik, the number 4 House Republican, has become a close ally of Trump's and has increasingly positioned herself as a betting favorite to be on the ticket. That's, of course, if Trump wins the nomination. We've got to be fair, and that's what we try to do on this program. If he does end up ultimately win the nomination, could she be the pick? Now, we followed her closely on this program and through the years. Obviously, she's from New York, has always been kind of up-and-comer, always a name to keep on your radar when you're talking politics. She's made campaign stops to boost the former president, frequently issues statements and social media messages backing him, and at times echoes his, and this is The Hill's term, controversial language. She also made political and legislative moves to highlight her loyalty to Trump. Now, I'm not going to go through all the specifics because they normally find a way to, of course, criticize her as well in this. But the key here with Elise is this. She is in Trump's innermost circle, a person close to Trump, and Stefanik said, and of course had to speak on anonymity. He trusts her. They have regular conversations, and she is his chief defender on Capitol Hill, and everyone knows it. Now, a person close to the Trump campaign told The Hill that Stefanik has, quote, been in the trenches for Trump daily since the early impeachment hearings in the House, knocking every ball out of the park. And she made, and this is unrelated in a way to Trump. Again, if you're just joining us, I apologize about the background noise. There's some landscaping going on with the lights, the Christmas lights, right out in front of our studio this morning. So if you hear that, I do apologize because it can get kind of distracting. Here's another comment. Going back to Claudia Tenney nominating former President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Other presidents have gotten the Peace Prize for much less. That is true. I remember the criticism when Obama won it just a few months into his presidency. So yes, but back to Stefanik. Stefanik, and again, this is unrelated to Trump, but if you recall, she had a great I don't know what's the word I want to look for. Well, it was a great hearing where she went after the Harvard president and the various university presidents on the anti-Semitism on college campuses. And that really got a lot of national attention. So that was a good time for that to happen. Number one, for highlighting that and exposing it, the anti-Semitism rot on college campuses, but also to make her a rising star even more so. But continuing with this anonymous source. And then, of course, while we all know that she is a stalwart, then we see what she's done in recent hearings about anti-Semitism. Oh, there you go. And that is a very difficult topic. It draws a lot of fire, and she never even ducked. That was proof of her mettle outside of Trump's defense. That kind of opened up a whole lot of other dimensions of Elise Stefanik. Now, as I said, and the Hill goes through some of the reasons why it could make sense. Stefanik would make sense as a running mate to Trump for a host of reasons. It's generally thought to be a smart move for Trump to have a woman on his ticket, and Stefanik's loyalty would be prized. She's also well known for her combativeness with the press, something Trump might like. Former Representative John Faso, who served with Stefanik, said his former colleague can really parry and thrust with the other side and with the media. I think that's one of her strongest suits. She's unflappable. She's very smart. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. A former GOP aide said she doesn't bring an electoral advantage, and that's what I've been highlighting, that, it doesn't really help when it comes to the electoral map, but it brings the advantage of her potentially courting female voters and the ability to command a national presence. So what's your thoughts? Now, I did see this comment from a viewer. Stefanik for New York governor. If she isn't VP, get rid of Hochul next election. I wonder, Stefanik, I don't know if that's a tough road to take, because it is so difficult. Look, you have former Congressman with Lee Zeldin who couldn't pull it off at a time when she was perhaps the most vulnerable, meaning Hochul. So perhaps, I'm not sure what Stefanik's dreams are. I know she's got goals, I'm sure, and aspirations. She always seems to. She's always made a name for herself, so that could very well be the case. Oh, cool. Thank you. The construction noise is not coming through at all, by the way. Oh, good. Because the beeping is definitely coming through here. Thank you for that comment to ease my worried mind. But yes, Stefanik, it's just something interesting to think about. I know we have time on that. I don't know why Trump, and who knows if he would pick too early. You want to normally wait for the nomination, but if you recall Ted Cruz trying to make kind of a difference in the polls, he picked Carly Fiorina early, before the nominating process obviously was done. So it was kind of I won't say last-ditch effort to make it sound bad, but just trying to make a little bit of a difference perhaps in the polls and in various states. So I don't see why he would pick that early. But Stefanik I'm in no way criticizing the choice. I'm just curious what you think as these names. I like Tim Scott is another name that I like a lot. But we've got a lot more to talk about. Stay with us. We got to take a short break. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We'll be right back. Overlooking beautiful Market Street. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, I'm Frank Acom. This is Frankly Speaking. Appreciate you joining us. I did want to make another quick announcement, 2 quick announcements. If you did not hear me at the beginning of the show, make sure that you mark your calendars. If you would like to wish your significant other a special Valentine's greeting to be broadcast on Big Fox TV, stop by the studio right here, 33 East Market Street in Corning on February the 5th, 6th, or 7th. We'll have a camera set up from noon to 2 so you can record your heartfelt message for that someone special, or if you're not maybe about being on TV, or you don't want to come down, or whatever the case may be, maybe you're at work, you can send a message. You can send it to me, and I will include that in the commercial. So it'll be written out, but please give a name and your name, not full name. We can keep it, John and Susie or whatever. But we had so much fun with the holiday greetings that I think this has a lot of potential. Then when you record, that'll be broadcast the week of Valentine's Day. Also, I had someone reach out and contact and say that I sometimes say Valentine's. I appreciate that. Thank you. Also, another quick announcement. I know I don't want to run too long, but I don't want to forget this. And I know things like this take time. From our friend, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, he is promoting a Donate Life art contest. Winners will be notified on March 22nd, but you have to get your submissions in by February 29th. You see that all up on your screen. must be submitted by a teacher or a parent and must include student's name, grade level, age, address, phone number, and email. Those are the categories there on your screen for the contest, and there's the website where you can submit and find out more at the bottom. As you look at that, as you write that down, the winners, get this, their artwork will be hung throughout the Legislative Office Building during Blue and Green Spirit Week, April 6th through the 12th. Winners will receive a $100 gift card and will be recognized at a press conference to be held on April 16th in Albany. So for more information on this opportunity, check that link on the bottom of your screen. Thank you to Phil for sending this. As he said in his quote, I'm pleased to announce the Donate Life Student Art Contest. Organ donation is a cause near and dear to my heart, so I'm always happy to help promote this important issue however I can. So thank you. There's a couple quick announcements that I wanted to get to. And I will bring that up before the 29th. But no, sometimes art projects can take a while, so I didn't want you to rush. House Republicans are moving closer to that rare move of impeaching DHS Secretary Mayorkas. House Republicans will hold a markup of their impeachment articles against Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas on Tuesday, moving closer to taking the rare step of impeaching a cabinet official. The House Homeland Security Committee will mark up its resolution claiming Mayorkas has committed high crimes and misdemeanors for his handling of the southern border. And now, how do you like this? It's from CNN. Even though a number of constitutional experts have said the evidence does not reach that high bar. Did you ever see that quote when, maybe they're talking about one of Trump's lawsuits or court cases where a lot of experts, a lot. Well, who? A number of. A controversial move would make Mayorkas the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in nearly 150 years. All right, we have to take a short break. Man, we are running long this morning. We'll keep you updated, by the way, about Mayorkas. Thank you for all the comments, and I know I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. Thank you to all the waves. One of those mornings that we just can't get to all, but I do appreciate it. So let's take that short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking. I didn't put on the music this morning. We're going right to it here because I've got a lot to get to before we wrap up. Thank you for joining us. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm sure you probably heard this by now, but if not, the ex-IRS contractor has been sentenced to 5 years in prison for leaking Trump's tax records. It wasn't just Trump as well. It was Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. And those were released to ProPublica. Trump's was released to the New York Times, having no qualm about reporting on that. Charles Littlejohn pleaded guilty in October, and prosecutors sought the statutory maximum of 5 years in federal prison, saying that he abused his position by unlawfully disclosing thousands of Americans' federal tax returns and other private financial information to multiple news organizations. Prosecutors said that Littlejohn weaponized his access to unmasked taxpayer data to further his own personal political agenda, believing that he was above the law. He will also have to pay $5,000 in fines. Okay. So there you go. That's just an update. Oh, did you see this about Ilhan Omar? Ilhan Omar essentially saying that she puts Somalia first. And now she is a sitting Congress member. A top House Republican called on Representative Ilhan Omar, a Democrat from Minnesota, if you're not familiar, to resign Monday for delivering a speech in which her critics say she placed Somali interests ahead of American ones. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer said Ilhan Omar's appalling Somalia first comments are a slap in the face to the Minnesotans she was elected to serve and a direct violation of her oath of office. She should resign in disgrace. Now, Omar, the first Somali American in Congress, appeared to assure her Somali American constituents that she would do everything in her power to prevent the disputed breakaway republic of Somaliland from entering into a sea access deal with landlocked Ethiopia. According to the clip, she essentially saying that she'll put Somalia first, and Emmer was not the only one to reach out and say that she should resign. Other people having similar comments. I just found that interesting. I didn't know if you'd see that anywhere else. That was from the New York Post. We got to take our last break, and then a couple really quick things to wrap up on. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I honestly don't know if It's even possible to jam more information in a 1 hour program. Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking. In New York, let's get to a New York issue before we leave and wrap things up. In a New York issue, they're eyeing a rule change, to hire thousands amid the migrant crisis. New York is weighing a plan to hire thousands of migrants and asylum seekers who have legal working status in the U.S., but may face barriers to finding jobs such as language skills or prior experience. This coming from Bloomberg. State agencies have identified about 4,000 positions that could be filled by these individuals, mostly in entry-level roles that are hard to recruit for. According to a January 12th memo from the Department of Civil Service, the positions are most likely in areas like food service, equipment repairs, facilities management, and office assistance, according to the memo. To make these jobs more accessible, the state is proposing to create transitional titles, which recruitment is more in line with the candidate's qualification. Once in those jobs, the workers would receive training and support to help them gain the necessary skills to be eligible for permanent roles. Governor Hochul has proposed $2.4 billion to help provide for the more than 170,000 migrants who have arrived in the city since April of 2022. Isn't it interesting? The article is about jobs, 4,000 positions with 170,000 migrants arriving in the city. Okay, one last thing. This is interesting. I just received this. I don't have any more information. This is from a viewer. Elmira is having a special town board meeting today. It says at noon. Boy, that's a special meeting agenda. So at noon. So you may want to check into that before you go out. But thank you for highlighting that. Okay, today, how much time do I have? Yes. According to the New York Times, today's teenagers are anxious about their futures and disillusioned by politicians. Welcome to the club. It's just 1/3 of respondents aged 12 to 17 said things were going well for children and teenagers today. In a survey published Monday, the media group that funded the poll was Common Sense Media, which is a children's advocacy group. Less than half said they thought they would be better off than their parents when they grew up. A downbeat view shared among teenagers in many rich countries. And it's not just about teenage angst, it says here. A different survey by Gallup and the Walton Family Foundation has asked questions of young people over time and looked at how their answers have changed. Members of Generation Z, Gen Z, ages 12 to 27, are significantly less likely to rate their current and future lives highly than millennials were when they were at that same age. Yes, a lot of politics here. It's not about soon-to-be voters that are apathetic about public policy. They are actually very active. But the Common Sense Media survey, nearly 2/3 of respondents, 12 to 17, said politicians and elected officials do not reflect the needs and experiences of young people. Boys and white respondents were slightly more likely to say so. Only 7% of teenagers said politicians represented young people very well. We are out of time. Have a great day, everyone. Join us tomorrow morning for Frankly Speaking, starting at 7, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox will see you then.